Have you ever like noticed how just one single word can like totally change the whole vibe of something? You know, like you can be talking about the same exact thing, but just swap out one word and bam, totally different reaction. Like just the other day, I was trying to convince my friend to try this new recipe, right? And I kept calling it healthy. And they were just like, ugh, no thanks. But then I was like, wait, what if I call it nutrient dense? And suddenly they were all interested. It's crazy how much power words have. Well, that got me thinking about this book I've been reading called Words That Work by Frank Luntz. And it's all about how the words we choose can like impact pretty much everything. We're talking politics, marketing, everyday conversations, like you name it. So today we're going to deep dive into the fascinating world of language and persuasion, exploring some key insights from words that work. One of the first things that like jumped out at me in the book was this idea of, the power of simplicity, like keeping things straightforward and using words that everyone can understand. You might think, well, duh, that's obvious. But it's amazing how often people overlook it. Like Luntz gives this crazy example about the Christian Brando case back when Marlon Brando's son was on trial for shooting his half-sister's boyfriend. Now, the legal term for what he was charged with was involuntary manslaughter. But that just didn't seem to like connect with the public. It was too jargony. So Luntz came up with this phrase, accidental manslaughter. And here's the thing, like legally speaking, accidental manslaughter isn't even a real term, but he started using it with the media and it like totally caught on. People started using that phrase and it definitely, influenced how they saw what happened. And it's not just legal stuff, right? Think about some of the most successful marketing campaigns out there. Just do it. Got milk, short, catchy, to the point. Another big idea from the book is all about credibility. Basically, if people don't believe you, they're not going to buy what you're selling, literally or figuratively. Makes sense, right? And Luntz uses this epic fail of New Coke as an example. Remember that? Like back in the 80s when Coca-Cola tried to launch this new, like improved version of their classic drink, they hyped it up like crazy, telling everyone it was the best thing since sliced bread. But people tasted it, and it just wasn't as good. They overpromised and underdelivered, and their credibility took a major hit. It goes to show that you can't just slap a fancy label on something and expect people to like believe it's amazing. You got to be able to back up your claims. Otherwise, you risk losing people's trust. And once that's gone, it's hard to get it back. Now, speaking of trust, think about brands that have been around forever, like Maxwell House, good to the last drop, or M&M's, melts in your mouth, not in your hand. These messages have been consistent for decades, and that's a big part of what makes those brands so iconic. But here's the thing. It's not enough to just be credible, right? You also got to be interesting. People are constantly bombarded with information these days, and our brains, like, crave novelty. Luntz talks about how this played out during discussions about Social Security reform. The initial message is all about preserving and protecting Social Security, which, sounds pretty reasonable, right? But when they tested out the phrase strengthening Social Security, it resonated way better with the public. Why? Because strengthening implies, like, making something even better. It speaks to progress, while preserving just sounds a bit stale. It's a subtle shift, but it makes a big difference. It shows that sometimes framing an idea in a new way can make it much more appealing. You know what else people get excited about? Their own hopes and dreams. We all want to be better, do better, have better, right? And effective language taps into those aspirations. Think about slogans like Olay, love the skin you're in, or L'Oreal, because you're worth it. They're not just selling a product, they're selling a feeling, a sense of like self-worth and empowerment. And this isn't just a marketing trick. It's a powerful tool that's been used throughout history, especially in politics. Think about iconic phrases like John F. Kennedy's "Ask not what your country can do for you," or Franklin D. Roosevelt's "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." These words don't just inform, they inspire. They tap into our deepest desires for a better world. Okay, so we've talked about the power of simplicity, credibility, and speaking to people's aspirations. But words that work goes even deeper than that. It emphasizes that sometimes it's not just about the words you say, but about what you show. Visuals, actions, they can make your message so much more impactful. It's like that saying, actions speak louder than words, right? Well, Luntz argues that they actually work best together. He brings up John Kerry's presidential campaign back in 2004. Kerry, a decorated Vietnam War veteran, often brought his fellow veterans, his band of brothers, to campaign events. It was a powerful visual, right? Here's this guy surrounded by these tough-looking veterans who've got his back. It projected an image of strength and leadership. But then this group called the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth emerged. And they were veterans too, but they were totally against Kerry. They put out these ads claiming that Kerry wasn't the hero he made himself out to be, that he'd exaggerated his war record. And it wasn't just words on a screen. They showed these interviews with veterans who'd served alongside Kerry. And these guys were saying some pretty negative stuff. Now, regardless of whether the accusations were true or not, the point is that seeing these veterans, these guys who'd actually been there, speaking out against him, had a huge impact. It undermined his credibility and made people question his whole narrative. It's a reminder that visuals can be incredibly persuasive, especially when they're unexpected or they contradict the existing story. And this leads to another big idea from the book, be the message. It's all about authenticity, walking the walk, not just talking the talk. It's about aligning your actions with your words so people see you as genuine and trustworthy. Luntz gives this example of Bill Ford, Henry Ford's great-grandson, who took over as CEO of Ford Motor Company back in the early 2000s. The company was struggling, and they needed someone who could embody their values and lead them into the future. Bill Ford, with his down-to-earth personality and genuine passion for cars and the company's legacy, was the perfect fit. He talked about innovation, environmental responsibility, things that resonated with people at the time. But more importantly, he actually did those things. He led by example, investing in hybrid vehicles and making sustainability a core part of the company's mission. It wasn't just empty words. He was living the message. And that made all the difference. Okay, so we've explored the power of words in some pretty big picture scenarios, politics, marketing, all that. But here's the thing. All these principles apply to our everyday lives too. Whether you're talking to your boss, writing an email, or even arguing with your partner, the words you choose matter. Luntz dives into some specific situations in the book, and I found them super helpful. What do you do if you get pulled over by a cop for speeding? Now, if you're totally innocent, by all means, fight that ticket. But let's be real. Most of the time, maybe we're going a little over the limit, right? In those cases, Luntz says the best thing you can do is admit you were wrong and apologize. Don't argue. Don't make excuses. Just be polite and respectful. He says cops deal with so much crap that they really appreciate it when someone's honest and humble. Or how about those times when you're desperately trying to catch a flight and the gate agent is all, sorry, the doors are closed. There's nothing I can do. Ugh. You know that feeling, right? Well, Luntz has some tips for that too. He says you have to be super polite and understanding, but also emphasize how much this flight means to you. Maybe you're going to a wedding or a job interview where you haven't seen your family in ages. Make it personal, And here's the kicker. Offer to be the last person on the plane. Nobody wants to delay a flight, right? So by saying you'll be the last one on, you're basically saying, look, I know I'm asking a lot, but I'm not going to hold everyone else up. It shows you're considerate and might convince them to bend the rules a little. And then, of course, there's email. Oh, man, do we all spend way too much time on those? Luntz's advice. Keep them short, simple, to the point. No one wants to read a novel in their inbox. He suggests using bullet points, short paragraphs, strong action verbs, anything that makes it easy for people to scan and understand what you're asking. And always proofread before you hit send. Typos can make you look, not so great. The takeaway here is we need to be mindful of our language no matter the situation. The words we choose have power, you know. They can shape perceptions, build relationships, even change the course of events. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. Think about all the incredible things that have been achieved through the power of words. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. These words inspired millions and changed the world. Or maybe it's something smaller, like that time you convinced your friend to try that new restaurant and they absolutely loved it. Or when you wrote a killer cover letter that landed you your dream job. Words matter, right? They're the tools we use to connect with each other, share ideas to make things happen. So let's use them wisely. So, you know, we've been talking about how important it is to choose the right words, right? But this book, Words That Work, it goes even deeper than that. It's not just about like saying the right things.
It's about actually being the message you're trying to convey. Luntz uses this phrase, be the message, and it really got me thinking about, you know, authenticity. Like, you can say all the right things, but if your actions don't match up, people are going to see right through it. He gives this example about John McCain during the 2000 presidential election. You know, McCain was known for being this straight-talking maverick kind of guy. And he totally played that up during his campaign. He had this bus, right? He called it the Straight Talk Express, and he'd travel around and hold these town hall meetings. But here's what I found interesting. McCain wasn't afraid to poke fun at himself, to show his flaws. He even went on Saturday Night Live, a show that, you know, often made fun of him. And he just totally owned it. He was willing to laugh at himself, to be vulnerable. And that really resonated with people. It showed a level of authenticity that, frankly, his opponent, George W. Bush, just didn't have. Bush had this like more controlled, scripted image, and it didn't feel as genuine. So it's like, even in politics, being real, you know, showing a little vulnerability can actually make you more relatable. Anyway, so we've talked about the power of words in these like big picture scenarios like politics and marketing. But here's the thing. All of these principles, they apply to our everyday lives too. We're not all trying to win elections, right? But we all have to communicate in different situations. And Luntz gives some really helpful advice for specific situations. Like, what do you say if a cop pulls you over for speeding? Now, if you're totally innocent, fight that ticket. But, you know, let's be real. Most of the time, maybe we were going a little over the limit. And Luntz says the best thing to do in those cases is to just admit you were wrong and apologize. Don't argue. Don't make excuses. Just be polite. He says cops deal with so much crap that they really appreciate it when someone is just honest and humble. Or how about those nightmare scenarios where you're like desperately trying to catch a flight and the gate agent is all, sorry, the doors are closed, there's nothing I can do. Ugh, that feeling, right? Well, Luntz actually has some tips for that too. He says, first of all, be super polite and understanding. Those gate agents deal with like stressed out travelers all day long. But then emphasize how much this flight means to you. Maybe you're going to a wedding or a job interview, or you haven't seen your family in ages. Make it personal. And here's the kicker. Offer to be the last person on the plane. Nobody wants to delay a flight, right? So you're basically saying, look, I know I'm asking a lot, but I'm not going to hold everyone else up. Then, of course, there's email. We all spend way too much time writing those things, right? Luntz keeps it simple. Keep your email short, simple, to the point. No one wants to read a novel in their inbox. Use bullet points, short paragraphs, strong action verbs, anything that makes it easy to scan and understand what you're asking. And always, always proofread. Typos, they can make you look bad. But beyond the mechanics, Words That Work really emphasizes thinking about your audience and what you want to achieve. Whether it's an email to a friend or a formal proposal, being intentional with your language can make a huge difference. One of the most fascinating things I took away from the book is this idea that language is constantly evolving. Like words that were totally cool a few years ago can sound super outdated now. And new words are popping up all the time thanks to the internet and social media. It's like, remember when everyone was saying for shizzle or bling bling? Yeah, maybe that's just me showing my age. But the point is, what was once cool can quickly become, well, kind of cringy. It's not just slang, though. The actual meanings of words can change. Luntz uses occupy
As an example, like hundreds of years ago, it was a pretty racy word. But now, because of the Occupy Wall Street movement, it's associated with social justice and protesting, or gay. Right. It used to mean happy, but now, obviously, it has a whole different meaning. And this happens all the time with words like literally, extra, woke, all those buzzwords. It just shows you how language is constantly changing and adapting. So what does that mean for us? I think it means we've got to stay curious, right? Pay attention to how people are using language, what new words are popping up. Because if you're still using the same slang from high school, you might sound a little out of touch. And if you're not paying attention to how language is evolving, you might be missing out on new ways to connect with people. That's what I love about Words That Work. It's not just about choosing the right words. It's a reminder that language is powerful and that we should use it wisely. You know, it's funny, right? Like sometimes you hear a word and it just like instantly throws you back to a certain time or place. Like for me, the word groovy, it always makes me think of, you know, those cheesy 70s shows my parents used to watch were like bling, bling. Definitely takes me back to the early 2000s. And it's interesting how words like that, which were like so popular back then, they sound almost, well, kind of ridiculous now, right? Like they're these little time capsules of language showing us just how much things change. And that's one of the things that really stuck with me from Words That Work. It's not just about like picking the right words, you know. It's more about understanding that language is always evolving. Luntz uses this example of the word occupy, right? He points out that like centuries ago, it actually had a kind of, well, you know, a suggestive meaning. But then because of Occupy Wall Street, it totally changed. Now it's all about like social justice and protests and stuff. Or think about the word gay. It used to just mean happy, right? But now, obviously it means something completely different. And this kind of thing is happening all the time, like words like literally or extra or woke, all those like buzzwords that everyone's using these days. It shows you how language is this like living, breathing thing that keeps changing with the time. So what does all this mean for us? You know, just regular people trying to communicate every day.
Well, I think it means we got to stay curious, right? Like, pay attention to how language is being used around you. What new words are people saying? How are the meanings of the words we already know changing? Because let's be real, if you're still using the same slang you did back in high school, you might sound, well, a little out of touch. But it's not just about being cool or whatever, it's about being effective, you know? By staying aware of how language changes, we can make sure we're using words that actually like resonate with people, words that communicate what we really mean. And that brings me to, I think, the biggest takeaway from Words That Work. It's all about intention.
Whether you're writing an email, having a conversation, or even just like thinking to yourself, the words you choose, they matter. They have this incredible power to like shape how people see things, to build relationships, to make a real difference in the world. So yeah, next time you're trying to find the right words, remember what we talked about today. Think about simplicity, credibility, tapping into those deeper aspirations that we all share. But most importantly, be yourself. Let your words reflect who you are, what you believe in. Because at the end of the day, the most powerful words are the ones that come from the heart. They're the words that inspire us, motivate us, and, you know, really stick with us. And that's our deep dive for today.